What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Alex and this is Speed Clinic. If you recall in the last video that I did on the Shelby GT500, we did an overhaul on the rear suspension, did a panhard bar, some lower control arms, stabilizer, and some other good little stuff here and there. If you recall in the end of the video, I did mention that I was going to be putting on some American racing headers in an X-pipe. Well, I ran into some health issues last year and it kind of set me back, but I think I'm ready to hammer down on it now. So I'm going to be doing a video on the install of the headers in increments. Part of the reasoning behind that is because I'm going to be taking my time on this stuff, but at the same time, I don't want to slack. So if I put out a video on it now, I know it's going to motivate me to keep working on it and get a video out on it the next week and the week after. So I will be doing the install on these headers, and then I'll also be data logging the car with either Lund or Venomous Tuning. So I'll keep you posted on who I decide to go with on that, and I'll be also doing the data logging myself. So if you're on the fence about data logging and you're not too sure how to go about it, this video will give you a general idea about data logging and what that all entails and what's required. So it's really not that difficult, but visualization and seeing somebody else go through it is pretty beneficial, and it kind of gives you a step ahead as to executing that. So for today's video, I'm going to show you exactly what I already took off on the top part of the engine, and then we'll also be going underneath the car and taking off the mid pipe. These are the long tube headers from American Racing with the off-road X pipe. And one thing I found a little strange is that when I received these, they had this on there. It said 2015 Mustang, so maybe it was just a mistake that they wrote that on there. But yeah, those are the bungs for the O2 sensors. There's the EGR port. And here's all the hardware that they gave me. These are the extenders for the sensors and all the bolts. I'll probably be using a variety of assortments for these. Maybe some of the original stock studs and then some bolts mixed and matched, just to kind of give me a better way of getting those headers in by myself. The studs will actually help me align it better, and then the bolts, I mean, I might not be able to use studs on certain parts of the header. It might hit against the actual tubing, but who knows, we'll see how well that plays out. So for the top part of the engine, what you're going to want to do is take off the intake. It's going to be located in this area, and also the filter too, because you're going to free up some space with that. This is going to be the intake. You're going to have a clamp on both ends. So on this end is going to be the filter part, and you're going to have a clamp here. You're just going to undo that, and this is going to essentially slide into there. So you're going to also want to disconnect the PMAS. You're going to want to disconnect the vacuum, and then also the PCV. This connector has a hose that goes routed to the driver's side valve cover, which is going to be right here. And this is going to be your PCV. So you're going to just disconnect this. You'll push on this connector right here, and then you'll slide it out. It's real easy. If you're working too hard, you're probably doing it wrong. So just kind of regroup after that if you're having trouble with it. Other than that, this is going to kind of be pretty much everything that I'm taking off for today on the driver's side. Then for the passenger side, I want to disconnect the battery tray, and the battery tray is going to be 3 different bolts. I noticed they had some blue Loctite on them, so it might be a little bit of a struggle taking those off initially, but once you get those out, just set them aside. Spray the EGR nut, because that might be a pain in the butt for some people. All right, so after I let that EGR nut soak up with WD-40, I went ahead and hit it with these big crescent wrenches. This one was really good to pretty much break it loose, and I had to use this one as well to kind of maneuver my way in there, because it is kind of a bit of a cramp in there. So just keep that in mind and take note of that. So that is breaking the EGR nut loose. The next thing I did was spray all the exhaust bolts and the O2 sensors with WD-40 as well. There is a O2 sensor right behind the EGR nut on the mid pipe of the exhaust. All right, so let's get underneath the car and I'll show you exactly what I sprayed before I started actually working on it. All right, so let's work our way forward first. So on the driver's side, towards the front of the engine where the header is at, you're gonna see 2 of those exhaust studs and nuts. I soaked those with PB Blaster, And to the left of it, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but I also soaked that O2 sensor as well. And on the passenger side, the O2 sensor is going to be on the mid pipe portion of it, and you're going to see also a nut there with the stud, and also a nut there with the stud. So soak those with PB Blaster or WD-40, and then moving downwards, we've got some more O2 sensors right here and right here. Soak those as well. And lastly, we have 2 clamps holding the mid pipe to the axle back, so we're gonna go ahead and soak those nuts as well. Today, I'm actually gonna be breaking them off and taking this mid pipe off. All right guys, we were actually done taking off the mid pipe on this car. That was the main objective for today's agenda and for today's video. Basically, I just wanted to get the car on jack stands, start taking off some of the stuff for the top of the engine bay, and then work my way down and take off the mid pipe, because my brother did purchase a mid pipe from the flea market about a few weeks ago, and he wasn't too sure whether or not what car it was for. The owner there stated that it was for a GT500. So he came over after my mid pipe was off and he tried it on my car just to make sure that it did in fact fit. It did, everything worked out in his favor, so that'll be a separate video for another day. But we did take everything off on this car for the mid pipe, and I'll go ahead and give y'all guys some pointers and tips that you can utilize whenever you're taking off the mid pipe to save you some time and some trouble along the way. So this is a little pesky feller, I will say that. The best way to go about it is when you undo the EGR tube that goes to the header, the nut, try to get it out of the way as much as you can. So if you just undo that and scoot it forward and hold it that way, it'll stay in place, or have somebody else hold it, and you can snake your hand in there and then start working your way towards that plug, which is this one. And you're gonna have to get your whole hand on both sides of the plugs, because you're gonna need to squeeze the other end of it to pull this one off. So what I ended up doing was, with my 2 fingers, I squeezed on the opposite end of the plug, which was the female end, and I used like my 2 bottom fingers to like kind of push it out while I was holding it in place. It was kind of difficult, but you can do it by yourself. If you have another person go underneath the car and pull down on this wire, you should be able to do it with just holding on to the other end of the clip to squeeze those 2 clips together, and it should come off fairly easy. That's probably just what took the longest, is to get this plug undone. But other than that, everything came off pretty easily. Yeah, the O2 sensors, the nuts for the clamps in the back, and then the nuts for the 2 front studs. Well, actually I should say 4 front studs. That's it. That's pretty much it for today. On the next video, I'm going to be taking off the K-member on this car, and I'm going to be supporting the trans and the front part of the engine. I haven't decided whether I'm going to use the crank pulley or the oil pan. The oil pan is cast iron, so I'm not too worried about that, but I definitely just didn't want to leave the engine supported by the trans, because that's a lot of stress back there, and I've seen some guys do that, but I just don't really trust that method. I need to have at least like 2 little insurance policies. So I'm gonna have I bought this a while back, which is a trailer jack. I'm gonna use that for the front engine, and then I have another regular jack in there somewhere that I'm gonna use for the trans. I actually have a trans jack too, so I haven't decided which one I'm gonna use. I don't think I'm gonna use a trans jack. I'm actually gonna use a scissor jack that's for the car, just because I think that's rated for a lot more weight. Put some rags on the top part of the tailpipes for your axle backs, just because when you're moving the mid pipe off and trying to wiggle it off of the rear pipes, it's gonna cause some movement on these back tailpipes, so you don't want them scratching up your diffuser. And just make sure you have something back there pressed between the pipes and the diffuser. So the 2 things that you can look forward to are getting the nut off of the EGR tube undone and breaking it loose, and also undoing this harness clamp. those are probably gonna be your two tasks that probably take you the longest out of the whole process. So that'll wrap up today's video, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments. Like I mentioned before, I do plan on removing the K member, but that won't be until another video. So until then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. One last thing I forgot to mention, when you're taking off that mid pipe, the nuts that go to the header from the mid pipe, you're gonna need to use a variety of assortments of extensions, swivels, and so just be crafty with that stuff. That's all I wanted to say. See you guys next time.